Good evening, all. Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So we're going to carry on our series looking at the best of the best, part 3 of the 1950s. I know it hasn't been in strict order, but we're going to carry on in the 1950s. And in 1960, of course, Mikhail Tal became world chess champion. So it's only right, actually, that you've got quite a few games of Tal. Well, at least 2 out of the 10 are actually Tal games, and we're going to have a look at them. So these were voted best of the best by members of ChessGames.com for this period. So 2 years before the 1960 World Championship match, there was a game which really demonstrated Tal's absolute brilliance on the chessboard. Bobotsov against Tal. Okay, let's have a look at this game. Before, I'll just add a bit, so just in case we might want to check out a few things. And Livebook, connect to Livebook. So this was played in Varna, the Olympiad, I believe, in Varna 1958. D4, and Mikhail Tal played knight f6, c4, g6. We actually get a king's engine defense, and I believe there's a story to this game that Tal had been blitzing in the previous evening, I think, in a hotel, playing a lot of blitz chess with this variation, and I think Bobotsov had noticed and wondered why Tal was doing some weird moves like sacrifices, and he followed the same game sequence basically as one of the blitz games. So we have this start position in the king's engine. Okay, so knight bd7, and white plays queen d2, a6, pretty standard so far. Now white castled queenside here. Quite often rook d1 is actually chosen, not committing to castling queenside. So when you commit to castling, yeah, you're creating a fixed target for the opponent, of course. But here, yeah, it looks strange to think that's the main move because there's a lot of congestion over here. So, but games apparently go like this. The congestion is gradually cleared, and then eventually white will castle kingside. But here, yeah, we see the rarer actually castling queenside. So we have now queen a5, king b1, and now very interesting b5. So black looks to have quite a harmonious looking position, except isn't there a small fly in the ointment here? It looks as though this move has been played a bit casually, hasn't it? Because there's a loose queen on a5. Nothing's holding up the queen on a5. And the move which looks really like a beginner's punishment is played here. Can you see what would be an attractive looking move to play for white? White to play. Do you think this can be punished? This next move. Has black done something wrong? Can white actually do something here? What would you play with white in this position? I think I have to make a Star Wars reference, yeah. Basically, this is quite interesting. So white to play. It looks as though black can be punished, no? What would you play with white to punish black here? I wouldn't have thought knight takes b5 because although it attacks the queen, I think we can just take on d2 and then take the knight. But also additionally, we can even take like this to protect the queen. No, not knight b5. Wouldn't you have thought there's something else though here? Knight d5, and here comes my Star Wars reference because this is how do I say it? the king's engine defense is often strong on the dark squares. The reason for that, okay, is statistically there's a lot of pawns on light squares. Yeah. I just want to try and get to grips with something. There's a lot of pawns on light squares, and we have corresponding dark square weaknesses, potentially. So maybe a normal person would just drop the queen back to protect e7, because the problem here is queen takes d2, there's knight takes e7 check first, and then white just takes here. So that would be like the beginner's punishment. The thing is about the king's engine defense is sometimes there is potential for hugely dynamic sacrifices based on black's dark square play. And here a really deep kind of sacrifice was played, which seems to betray normal material balance, but it is one of the absolute best moves in the position. So it looks as though he's just gone in for a simple trap, you know, because if he has to go back actually to here, you know, that actually white's much better. Knight takes f6, and then if here d takes c5, we've got a nasty pin actually. This would just be a disaster to go back. And if here, again, it's just better for white. D takes, it's just miles better for white, this position. You know, if we ever play like this, it's just a huge position for white. So this is not the idea to retreat the queen. So what do you think Tal played here? So my Star Wars reference, by the way, it's like if you're connected with like the universe, the power of the Force. This is almost like the power of the Force. If you're connected with the whole universe of the chess position, you'll realise that black is stronger on the dark squares. Okay, it might be the dark side of the Force here in this case, but black is actually stronger on the dark squares. Yeah, so it kind of helps justify things. But also you've got an unusual king placement where the king theoretically could be exposed to a b-file attack. So you've got black potentially stronger on the dark squares. This is Milko Bobotsov was playing white, and I think he had seen Tal playing with this stuff the night before, so that's why he went in for this. But yeah, there's something which really taps into the entire position, you know, features of the entire position. Yeah, so it's quite staggering that actually, you know, we get this magical queen sack, but really I think it's about taking account of the entire position as a whole. This is what I mean, the power of the Force. It's like the entire position is taken into consideration. So 2 pieces for a queen is not usually good enough. If white actually took that knight and ignored the queen, black would be better. Queen takes f5. Black's just better here. Yeah, there's a lot of play for black in this position. So the queen sack is accepted. But as I say, the only way to really understand this is that black was already strong on the dark squares. So it's only 2 pieces for a queen, but then add to that the king on the b file and this imminent, you know, opening of the b file, and there's something very interesting going on, really. And also, of course, there's a fork here immediately as well. We have rook c1, so there's also a pawn. So we've got 2 pieces on the pawn. You might think 7, right? 7, 3 each for the piece pawn. But think about this bishop though. This, as what I'm saying, in the context of this position, this bishop I would say is worth 4 or more, because it's actually pointed into like a critical, you know, part of white's position, and the dark squares, you know, white hasn't got the counterpart bishop. And this is a common recurring theme. It seems every game I've gone over on the channel recently has had this theme where one side has compounded dark square weaknesses, like playing f4, and compounded it by giving the opponent like a dark square bishop without a counterpart. So it's kind of an example of that as well. White was already weak on the dark squares, and even weaker, it's been exaggerated. A caricature has been made of the dark squares because of this bishop, and it's blasting down at white's king, which also, you know, is not looking good here. Now white actually counter-sacked the exchange, So a rook for like, so he's going -2. You can think of that -2, right? Counterset the exchange. But if he doesn't, you can see the power of the dark squares here. This position is very, very tricky, because this bishop's going to be even further unleashed with d3 soon if white doesn't do anything. If white tries to stop that, this is just getting to be a huge looking position here. It's just a massive looking position. It's this monster bishop. So white tried to like stymie the counterplay. He kind of sacked the exchange. So now, okay, so it was 2 pieces and a pawn, and then minus another 2 for the exchange sack. So it's sort of, we're approaching technical material balance now. In any case, here we've got almost material balance. Yeah, knight c1, just from a, you know, how we understand the piece values. But look at this position. The dark squares are just fundamentally, still weak, and white's king is unsafe. White is worse here. He's actually technically worse. He took on c4, and this is a very good move to play, but it wasn't actually. We have another move which is also good, hitting the bishop first, and maybe it's a very difficult position for white. This is very good as well for black. We have bishop b3, and now bishop takes d4, and the pieces are also coordinating very well. It's not just that white's weak on the dark squares. There's coordination on b2, which is an extremely critical dark square here. So white's actually totally on the defensive. So this kind of intuitive, you might think intuitive, but also I think he actually practiced this in Blitz, is very much taking an understanding of the whole position in terms of, you know, king safety, weak dark squares, piece coordination. So black is actually winning now. He's actually winning this position. White tries knight e2. We have c4. This attack is just very strong. c3. White dare not like take here or just lose his queen. Check. So it's a horrible position. If knight takes, it's still very horrible. Knight c4, and then it's just murder here. It's going to be losing more material. It's absolute murder. So this is already it's gone very badly wrong. We have queen d3. C takes b2. And if black has his way, I think he would just play bishop d7 and then carry on the attacks. Well, bishop d7 first. White played knight d4. We have bishop d7 anyway. Rook d1. Rook fc8, and now there's lots and lots of frets actually, like rook c4, knight c4, lots of frets. Bishop b3, trying to take control of that c4 square. Now we have knight a4, threatening knight c3 check. White takes that, bishop takes a4, and this pawn is now a major element of the position as well. We have knight b3. If the rook moves here, well, it can't move off the first rank because of rook c1 checkmate, and can't really, I don't think can do this either because of bishop takes d4 and then bishop c2 checkmate. So very, very difficult position. It's lost anyway. So bishop takes knight b3. We have rook c3, queen takes a6, bishop takes b3, a takes. And now a really crushing move. Probably a lot of moves are still winning. Probably this is still winning. A lot of moves are still winning. He just doubles the rooks, threatening rook c1. So we have queen a3. If this is, you just win the queen if you want. Yeah, if it's taken. So we have queen a3, but now rook c1 check. Rook takes c1 check, and that's it. If white plays on, he resigns. King a2, just b1, queen. Now, I have analysed the game in much greater detail actually on the Kingscrusher channel. This is just a revisit, a very intuitive revisit, that sometimes, yeah, some of Tal's sacrifices just take account of the entire position, I would say. I think that's the big lesson to learn from that. That the material balance is very generic. If you look at how weak the opponent is on a certain colour complex, especially if they haven't got a certain bishop, and you have, then you look at piece coordination, king safety, potential for deteriorating king safety. Yeah, it's just taking account of the entire position. This game is a wonderful game, and that showed the brilliance of Tal. It's a really holistic type of sacrifice, what he played in the opening. It seems crazy, but it's actually very logical, that queen sack for the two pieces, in my view. Okay, so that was a very, very quick go over of that game, but I hope that's the main lesson you get from it. Sometimes take account of the entire position when you sacrifice. It's not as crazy as it seems. It's actually very, very logical. Very. Okay, let's have a look at another game. Now, I never wanted to see this game again. Unfortunately, it's been voted as one of the top games of the 1950s. It does my head in, this game. It's becoming rapidly one of my least favourite Tal games because it just does my head in. Yeah, but it's there. So because it's there, okay, we're going to have another quick run through of this. It's been heavily analysed on my channel before. Tal against Coblentz, if you want to do a search for this. But it actually does my head in, this game. Okay. There's not too many which really do my head in, but this is one of them for Tal games. Okay, so this was played in Riga 1957, so hometown 3 years before the 1960 World Championship. So, magician from Riga, played in Riga 1957. E4 from Tal. So Tal was playing white against Coblentz. C5, knight f3, d6. We have an open Sicilian. And I think we've even covered this game on one of these shows in enormous detail. But I'm not gonna, this is more of an intuitive fly through tonight. Knight c3, knight c6, bishop g5, e6, queen d2. It looks fairly standard, the opening so far. Knight b3. So there might be an idea. No, actually there isn't. It's not worth taking here. It's not even a threat to take there. Black played queen b6. He will totally welcome, I think, bishop f6. I think he'd just take it. There's no point trying to win this pawn. There's even queen f2 anyway. And black would be stronger on the dark squares. Forget that idea. It's not even a threat. So f3. Now, maybe it's becoming more tempted, but that's not the idea. We have a6. The idea is to try and blast black with a kingside attack. g4, rook d8. Bishop drops back. So we have a typical looking pawn storm on the king side. b5, g5. Knight d7. And now a typical line opening move, g6, which I've actually used myself once against some 2400 in Lloyd's Bank Masters, and I managed to win that against Murugan. I had a very similar sort of theme, g6, try and wrench open some files here. hg, h5, g takes, so we've got this h file, rook h1, d5, so black in some ways logically counterattacks in the center. Let's see, this is a difficult position already for black. If he tries b4, you might consider b4. Maybe this is one of the better moves. Maybe even queen h2 is possible here, threatening mate. And apparently this is better for white. It's very, very complicated. Let's have a look at this. There's queen h8 lurking anytime the knight moves. So this is getting, this would be a scenario. b4 is a scenario which ultimately favours white, it seems. So we see this d5, and now it seems there might have been a way to play here, just playing bishop f4 as well, actually. If the queen moved here, then e5. Bishop f4, I think, has something going for it. If here, I think we take... Apparently this is very good for white, this position. So that's an alternative to the game, which is interesting. But Tal played e5. And so it's setting a kind of trap in one respect, because I think if the queen takes, the queen's going to be trapped after bishop f4 and bishop d3, and the queen is trapped, checkmated. So it's setting a trap. I don't think Tal's main intention was to set that trap. Black took with the knight, and here we have bishop f4, and technically black should apparently be okay. He plays the best move, which now threatens knight d3 check to win that bishop. We have queen h2, which threatens this mate on h8. So this knight d3 is pointless because king b1, we're still threatening this mate on h8. So kind of parried that. So we have king f8, which is still carrying now the threat knight d3 for bishop f4. So white plays to check, and we have this first pin. Now maybe black should have played king e7. It seems black should have played king e7, and black apparently should be better here. The queen is attacked, and if here bishop e7, apparently black's fine. He'll be threatening things like knight f3. He should be fine, apparently. Anyway, but he went into this pin, self pin, and yeah, pins are very interesting tactically as well, because they don't have to be immediately exploited. We have rook h7. Now this is protected with f5 just laterally, and now this is where it really becomes my least favourite Tal game, because there's like a whole mash of pieces in one sector of the board, and you really need to have a lot of mental energy to go through this game. We get another pin in the position, and yeah, bishop h6. Okay, so it's getting more and more complicated. Okay, what white is threatening bishop takes g7. That is parried. We can understand that's parried. But now, yeah. Okay, Tal plays now bishop takes b5. Okay, so this is a few things actually. The line clearance for acting on g7 as well as this idea, this a takes. Let's have a look at a takes. Wasn't played. Black played rook f7. If he does take on here, I think it's a disaster, but not with knight takes b5 apparently, because knight g6 sort of is equal apparently. Oh, this is crazy. Apparently this is, yeah, apparently it ends up equal, that line, with best play. Anyway, so black after a takes b, though, there is a strong idea which doesn't involve knight takes. There is rook g1 just piling up loads of pressure on g7, and for some reason this variation doesn't seem too mind-boggling, that g7 is ganged up on here. And it also takes away, of course, knight g6. We can just snap that off. So black here would be in trouble. If he has to play knight g4, interrupting tactic, then here knight takes b5, check. Apparently this is going to be better for white. White's fundamentally blasting through, I think. It's going to be much better for white. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So maybe Bobotsov, not Bobotsov, Coblentz. Maybe he saw something like rook g1 and thought this was too much. He played rook f7, and we still have this rook. Sorry, there's another question here about knight g6 in this position. You see, that would seem to trap the queen, so it's kind of worth considering, because black has really got things protecting g7. The thing is with this position, apparently the move to stay in the game is knight d4. So even if this is taken white, it's still better off to knight takes e6, knight takes c7. You see, this is why this is I think becoming rapidly one of my least favourite games, because it's just too much. The variations are just too much. Yeah, okay. After bishop takes b5, they're just too much. But as I say, if you really want to check out a lot of variations, I did do it in detail on my channel once. So rook f7 was played. We have rook g1. Okay, so we've got pins, multiple pins, like everywhere. So we have rook a7, and now this knight d4 is played. Knight d4. Now, computer crunching this finds something fascinating about this position, that actually white apparently is doing very well with bishop takes for some reason. I mean, if takes here, we take here. That's fair enough. And if bishop takes, we play here. And if the bishop drops back here, we play this. And if the queen moves, then we can stop playing this. And it's just horrible, apparently, for black. He's getting killed. Yeah, it's much better for white. So anyway, apparently, yeah, bishop takes a6 is a nasty move to meet. Okay, so anyway, but in the game we have knight d4, and now black played knight g4, trying to block up the attack. That's taken. Bishop e5, trying to defend. But now, knight c6 was played. Apparently, even stronger is knight f3. For example, bishop f6. This apparently is really nasty. If takes here, knight takes d5. It just falls to bits, black's position apparently. So anyway, knight f3 is also good. But knight c6, same sort of idea to remove the defender of g7. Bishop takes c3. Bishop e3. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Bishop e3. Okay. So what is white's actual threat? Well, bishop c5 is a major one here to try and get to that knight, to nudge the king. So yeah, it didn't recapture ordinarily. You might recapture, but bishop e3, strong. d4 trying to block that, and now with the e7 escape square covered, we have this move rook gh1 threatening queen takes and rook h8. So there's a mate in 2 threat. Just to show that on the board, if takes, there's check and then mate. So that has to be parried. An escape square is made for the king with rook d7. And because this bishop has been blocked by its own pawn now, this interruption has been made, this bishop goes back, now threatening. Yeah, just goes back to g5. Now what is the main threat? Probably taking and something horrible. Let's have a quick look. If black did take, well, this is the game continuation. Yeah, a takes b5. Yeah, I hate this game. I've decided I really hate this game. I never want to see this game again. Can you see what Tal played in this position? White play. Okay, white play. I wonder if you can guess the move. it's apparently there's a lot of resources in the position, but white to play. I think black blundered after this move. He might have been able to apparently equalise, but anyway, white to play, played a stunning looking move here. I think this is like Tal's expression actually. I think I know what he means now. The problem with his expression, he says about taking the opponent into a deep dark forest where, okay, there's a deep dark forest, but unfortunately it also has that effect on anyone trying to comment on his game. I don't like going into this deep dark forest where I have no clue about this position. I don't want to analyse endless variations. It is a deep dark forest for the spectator of this game. Anyway, in this deep dark forest, yeah, which both the opponent and the spectators have been taking, we have this weird looking rook 1h6, and I don't know what is it threatening? Rook takes e6. What one point is if g takes, bishop takes is very useful here. Rook g7, we can take this apparently, and if takes here we can take this. If takes here we can take this, and we're miles better now. So yeah, that crashes through. So yeah, rook h6 is very good. There seems to be two resources for black, which apparently would have been okay though, apparently, which for some reason black might have been able to survive this if black was a computer. King e7, check, double check. If black was a computer, this position apparently we have a perpetual check. So yeah, he missed that. Okay, he missed that possibility. Okay, we're literally, this is a deep dark forest. Yes, I think I understand now the quotation. If this game, if you remember one thing from this game, it justifies Tal's quotation, because actually the effect is on us. It's not the opponent, it's on us. Even years later with computers, the effect of this deep dark forest, I don't usually get this from playing for a game, but I feel it's a deep dark forest. I'll get you the quotation, hang on. Tal quotation, I'm going to Google it. Deep dark forest. I think this game is it. He says about taking the opponent. He's taking us into it. You must take your opponent into a deep dark forest where 2 + 2 = 5, and the path leading out is only wide enough for one. Yeah, I've so anyway, d3 was played. So apparently there was a way of equalising, at least one way. But anyway, d3 was, maybe the opponent's brain was fried by this point as well. Okay, so here it does defend g7. I guess the idea was to defend sneakily. Sorry, g7. That is taken. d2 check, and now not king b2 or bishop takes d2. If bishop takes, black would have rook takes d2, and apparently this is equal. Funny enough, the pieces seem totally misplaced, but there's a perpetual check, I think, coming up. Anyway, apparently it's okay for black. So he played actually king d1, the strongest move. now we have I don't know. If queen takes c6, let's have a look at that. There's rook f6 check here. And if, I don't know, if king e7, that's terrible because of rook takes g7. And if here, there's rook takes e6 check, so winning the queen. So that would be like, it's going to be good because it's winning the queen. That's good for white anyway. And you might have been wondering about this. Well, then we've got rook g6, which is a mate in 3, actually, after knight f6, queen f6, king d5, queen d4, checkmate. So basically, yeah, rook f7, and now the game finished with queen takes g7 check. So if the opponent resigns, apparently, if he plays on with king e8, rook takes f7 is winning for white. It doesn't matter about this deflection check. I think we just take it. It's no big deal because we've got the knight and we've got loads of material. So yeah, that's totally winning. Okay. I hate this game. I really do. It's one of my least favourite Tal games of all time because I feel I've been taken into a deep dark forest. You can only see this game, I think, when you're in a mood for, I don't know, something. Okay, but anyway, queen takes g7. If king, I don't know, what else was there? If king e8, rook takes f7. This is all winning for white now. So anyway, interesting game. Yes. Too complicated for me in my state of mind at the moment, but I hope you got something from it. Well, at least the first game. At least you might have got something from the first game, not this. Okay, and on that note, have a good week and see you next week. Okay, thanks very much. Cheers then.